Good morning, students. Yesterday we had made an attempt to understand the origins and the expansion uh, of the Maratha Empire. Today we will try to focus on the administration as it was built up or developed by Shivaji. The Maratha administration continues to be the same throughout, even after the times of Shivaji, even during the times of Peshwas. The kind of state that was developed by the Marathas was a benevolent state. And in the medieval period, when we are trying to understand, there were two administrations, important administrations. One was that of the Mughals, and the next important administration is that of Shivaji. While the Mughal administration had Persian elements in it, the administration of Shivaji had the indigenous and it had the principles of dharma which were guiding which becomes the philosophy of Shivaji's administration. So both the administrations stand in contrast, and the nature of state, though is same. Even Mughal state was, we can say, was a benevolent state. But in terms of benevolence, the Maratha state was at a higher level. And several historians have expressed the view that the Maratha administration was much better than the Mughal administration. So today we will just try to see what have been the features of the Maratha administration and how it functioned and how it molded the Maratha state. So in the first slide that I'm going to show you, one minute. The first slide that I'm going to show you, I have, a portrait and several other features which I put them in the form of bullet. And we will just try to understand each and every point which is connected to the administration of here, as I was telling you, Shivaji has been called the father of the Maratha nation. And besides being a great conqueror, he was also a diplomat, and he was also a very successful administrator. Okay, so in the Deccan region, taking the present-day Maharashtra into consideration, where you have the habitation of the Marathas as a force, and there you find Shivaji coming up with a very successful administrative network, which contributed to the growth of this particular region. So Shivaji's contribution not only to the political history of Maharashtra, but to the administrative history of Maharashtra becomes very, very important in the medieval times. In the words of Dr. Ishwari Prasad, who is a prominent historian, he says very clearly that his system of administration was better than Mughal administration in several areas. And this is a view which is expressed by many historians who are making a comparative study of the Maratha administration with the Mughal administration. Both the states have been benevolent states. Both have very strong administrators, and both of them have the three levels of administration, that is the central administration, the provincial administration, and the village level administration. But when it comes to taking the benevolent aspect into consideration, based on the benevolent aspect, most of the historians express the view that the Maratha administration was better in several areas when we are comparing it with the Mughal administration, and has contributed a lot to the growth and development of the Maharashtra region. Okay, here I'm showing you a slide where you can see the coronation ceremony of Shivaji, and after his administrative becomes more effective once he becomes the king of the Maharashtra region or the Maratha Empire, and takes proper control over the Maharashtra. The slide which is showing you the coronation ceremony of Shivaji. Here we are trying to get an idea of the nature of administration. The nature of state is a reflection of the nature of administration. In the medieval times, we are talking of monarchical forms of government. And in monarchical forms of government, the kind of ideas that the king has about the state, about the people, and about revenue, about religion, about society, about economy, all these factors become very important because he is the center of power, and all powers get centralized or concentrated in his hands. So the attitude of the ruler towards his people and his subject becomes very. Based on that, we say that the administrator is a benevolent administrator, and we say that the state is a benevolent state. So, when we are trying to understand about Shivaji, we call him a benevolent administrator. Dr. R.C. Majumdar, who is again a prominent historian, writes about him that he was not merely a daring soldier and a successful military conqueror, but also an enlightened ruler of his people. Here, the word enlightened is used in the context that the primary interest of the ruler is the people and the benefits of the people. See, when we call a benevolent ruler, or when we say a state is a benevolent state, in the medieval times, most of the states have survived to keep, have survived keeping in view the survival of the state and the survival of the ruler. The people became a secondary point. So political power and survival of the ruler became, and that is the reason you find extensive wars in the medieval period. If you take right from the times of the invasions of Muhammad Ghazni and Ghor down to the decline of the medieval, Mughal India, you have a series of wars, and all these wars are a resultant of the desire of the ruler to remain in power as a powerful ruler. So the interests of the people were taking the secondary role. Unlike this, Shivaji's administration was an enlightened administration. So remaining in power was an important factor. Along with it, the interests of the people dominated the survival as a political ruler. So we call him as an enlightened ruler. See, in the ancient period, there was an idea that the king is a repository of the God on earth and the king can do no harm. Okay, this is a kind of a view that is expressed about a king in the ancient times, which was limited to the ancient period. But when you come down to the idea of a benevolent administrator or an enlightened ruler, here he is trying to get into the basic needs of the people, like the social needs, the economic needs, and the cultural needs. The political needs are the needs of the state, but the social, economic, and cultural needs, when importance is given to them, the ruler turns out to be an enlightened ruler, and the administration turns out to be a benevolent administration. Okay, so Shivaji was readily accessible to all his subjects. He was a very popular monarch, and he kept a close watch on the administrative affairs of the state. So this is the way he was trying to monitor. Okay, what was important is that you should enjoy the loyalty of your subjects. You should enjoy the loyalty of your people. And when you enjoy this too, you become a popular monarch. And in the process of becoming a popular monarch, he kept a very careful watch close and careful watch on the administrative affairs, like preventing corruption, preventing any kind of nepotism, efficiency of the administrator. All these factors become very important. So keeping a watch, close watch on the administrative affairs of the state becomes a very important feature. So this turns the administrator into a benevolent. See, here we are trying to say that Shivaji is a benevolent administrator. So how he has become a benevolent administrator is basically because of the fact that he wanted to improve the social, economic, and cultural conditions, which are generally in favor of the people. So he has taken up some kind of administrative measures by the help of which he was trying to keep a very close watch on the administrative affairs of the state. So this becomes a very important. So you are a responsive and responsible ruler. So unless you are a responsive and responsible ruler, you cannot become a benevolent state. So again, taking the next point, all powers were concentrated on him, but he ruled with advisors of his ministers. This is a typical medieval form of administration. You centralize all powers in your hands and decentralize the administrative procedures. So all the ministers who were there, they were just advisories. Okay, they enjoyed their ministries at the behest of the king. They were very suggestive, and they were not in a position to act independently because all power was concentrated in the hands of the king. So it is a kind of a centralized autocracy. It was a kind of a centralized autocracy and decentralized administrative powers. So the decentralization is for administrative convenience, and what the king felt becomes very important. Okay, so decentralization of administrative powers, but centralization of autocratic power, the absolute power. This was one important feature. Okay, the common people, when we are taking the next point, the common people regarded him with great devotion. They considered him as the greatest benefactor. Again, the same view. Okay, when you reach out to the needs of the people, when you take the social, economic, and cultural interests of the people as the primary objective of the state, naturally, the people will look at you with a lot of devotion. They consider you to be the greatest ruler. So Shivaji turned out to be the greatest benefactor in the medieval times. Okay, taking the next slide here, I'm just trying to give you an idea that Shivaji had divided his administration into the provincial and the central administration. And at the third level, you also had the village administration. Okay, so the central administration was completely concentrated in his hands, and the provincial administration was decentralized. I was just trying to tell you, you have the power being concentrated in the hands of the king. So through the central administration, the power was getting concentrated in the hands of the king, and the provincial administration is a feature which is speaking of the decentralization process of the Shivaji's administration. So when we are trying to understand the central administration, he had a council of ministers, and this council of ministers were popularly known as the Rashtrapradan or Rashtrapradhari. It was basically an advisory council on the matters of the state, and he was not bound by it. Whatever the advices that were given by the Rashtrapradan or the Rashtrapradhari, it was not mandatory on his part to implement their suggestions. Whatever he felt, he implemented, but he had always taken the advices of this Ashtapradhan. So he had the right to appoint them, he had the right to dismiss them, and they enjoyed all the privileges They enjoyed their office as long as Shivaji wanted them to enjoy. Okay, this shows how autocratic in nature Shivaji was. Though he was autocratic, he was a benevolent ruler. This appointment was subject to their efficiency. So no administrative official, okay, or no minister should become a burden to the state. So you get an opportunity to work for the cause of the state if you are efficient. And if your efficiency is on the decline, you are dismissed. I mean, the state doesn't need you anymore. This was a kind of a philosophy that Shivaji was trying to follow. So most of the ministries, not only the ministries, most of the coveted administrative posts that were there in the Maratha kingdom were based on the idea of efficiency. If you are efficient, you could deliver the goods, work for the cause of the people, then you were given that kind of an administrative post. The Peshwa was the first among the ministers. Peshwa is, I mean, in the present day, you can say the chief minister or the prime minister. I mean, these are the terms that go along with the idea of Peshwa. So the Peshwa was the first among the ministers. And the word Peshwa stands for leader or a senior one. The word Peshwa stands for a leader. So he was the leader of the Council of Ministers, which used to advise the king on the nature of administration, on the administrative needs, and on the socio-economic and cultural interests of the people. So this was purely advisory, and the senior-most man or the senior-most one was taken as the leader of the ministries, and he was given the right, or he was given the freedom to correlate and all the ministries and advise the king on the advices that were needed. And then you have the provincial administration. Okay, the kingdom was divided mainly into 4 provinces. Each province was under a head called Mamlatdar or Viceroy. Mamlatdar or Viceroy. So you have the entire kingdom being divided into provinces, mainly 4 provinces, and each province was under the head control of a Viceroy. And Mamlatdar is a regional term which is used to indicate the provincial leader, and each province was divided into several districts and villages. The village was an organized institution. So you have the central administration, which was depending on the Ashtapradhan, and you have the provincial administration, which was depending on the Mamlatdar or the Viceroy. So you have a decentralization of administration at 2 main levels, the central and the provincial administration. And the village was considered to be the 3rd level of administration. Now we can see some of the general features of Shivaji's administration. And these features reflect the ideas with which Shivaji was functioning as a monarch. He had employed members of all castes and tribes to maintain balance among them. This shows the kind of, in the modern context, we can say a secular approach, a declassified approach. As a ruler, a declassified approach, a secular approach to maintain the balance, okay, in the administration, and to maintain equilibrium in the state, where the social stability, the political stability, and the economic stability of the state becomes important. So he employed members, drawing them from all castes, tribes, for the administrative convenience. So this was a very important point, and this gives an idea of the kind of attitude that this ruler had towards the people and the state. He assigned separate responsibilities to the ministers, and each of them was made responsible for work to him. So each had a kind of a responsibility at the individual level. He made no office hereditary. Nothing was hereditary. No office was hereditary. And in general, he did not assign jagirs to his civil and military office. Jagir is a kind of a land grant. So land grants were not given to civil and military officials. He gave special attention towards the administration of the forts because the forts were very important in the medieval times. He gave a lot of importance to the administration of the forts and the protection of the forts. In matters of administration, he gave superior position to civil officials as compared to military officials. So he drew the line of difference very clearly between the civil officials and military officials, and gave some kind of importance to the civil officials. He established the Raitwari system in revenue administration. The state kept direct contact with the farmers. The state kept direct contact with the farmers. This was always beneficial to the farmers. Shivaji took up special care to make his administrative system responsive to the needs of the people. And in the words of Dr. Ishwari Prasad, the institution which he established were an improvement upon the existing order and were adapted to the well-being of his subjects, that is, his people. Okay, so you find most of the historians in praise of the kind of administration that was developed by Shivaji during his time, which clearly indicates the kind of importance that Shivaji has attached to his administrative system. So here I am also giving you an idea of the land system or the revenue system. Land in every village was measured and the produce was roughly assessed. Land was measured and the produce, I mean, this was done basically to for tax assessment. Okay, land was also classified, land was assessed, and the produce of the land was assessed. So all this was done to estimate the taxes. And on the basis of the assessment, the cultivators was asked to pay 40% of their produce as land revenue. That which I just told you now. So the Raitwari system was introduced in which the revenue was directly collected from the farmers. Okay, Raitwari, farming community, direct contact with the farmers. So wherever possible, Shivaji abolished the Jagirdari system. The farmers had the option to pay land revenue in cash or kind. So it was, I mean, freedom was given to the farmer and he could pay the land tax in the form of cash or kind, depending on his convenience. So abolition of the Jagirdari system, promoting the interests of the farmers. These are some of the features when we are trying to understand the revenue system under Shivaji. Okay, the peasants could pay the revenue in installments. The accounts of the revenue officers began to be thoroughly checked. Okay, even installment was given, taking the climatic and other annual rainfall and other factors into consideration. If the peasant needed some kind of installment to pay the revenue, he was given that flexibility. The accounts of the revenue officers began to be thoroughly checked. In the event of famine or natural calamity, the state offered loans to the peasants. Shivaji introduced collection of taxes called Chauth or Sardesh Mukhi. So you have different kinds of taxes that were being levied by Shivaji. So Chhatrapati Shivaji introduced a system of administration largely borrowed from the administrative practices of the Deccani states. The kind of administrative practices that were there in the Deccan, he included some of them in his own administration, and based on his administrative conveniences, he included them. Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj designated 8 ministers, sometimes called Dashta Pradhan. It was not in the nature of the Council of Ministers. Each minister being directly responsible for the ruler. Okay, each minister was responsible directly for the ruler. The most important ministers were the Peshwa, who looked after the finances and general administration, and Sare-e-Nohbat, or the Senapati, which was a post of honor and was generally given to the leading Maratha chiefs. So this was a kind of features that you find in the Shivaji's administration, which turns out to be a very important feature. The Majumdar was the accountant. The Majumdar was the accountant, while the Vakil Naqvis was responsible for intelligence post and the household. Further, the Surnavis and Chitnis helped the king with his correspondence. The Dabir was most ceremonious and also helped the king in his dealings with foreign powers. The Nyayadish, this is the Ashtapradhan which we were talking of. The Nyayadish or Pandit Rao was in charge of justice and charitable grounds. Chhatrapati Shivaji preferred to give salaries in cash to the regular soldiers. However, sometimes the chiefs received revenue grants. Okay, so Shivaji strictly regulated the Mir Sardars were those, and Mir Sardars were those who had the hereditary rights in the land. Later, Mir Sardars grew and strengthened themselves by building strongholds and castles in the village. Likewise, they had become unruly and seized the country. Chhatrapati Shivaji destroyed their bastions and forced them to surrender. This was an administrative measure to prevent provincial or regional independence. Chhatrapati Shivaji was not only a deserving general, but also a skillful strategist, and he was also a shrewd diplomat and had laid the foundation of a strong state by curbing the power of the Deshmukhs. So these are some of the features that you find connected to the Shivaji's administration. So when we are talking of the medieval times, we have two important administrations, the Mughal administration and the administration of the Marathas. While the Mughal administration dominated the northern parts of India, the Maratha administration dominated the Deccan region and most of the Maharashtra region and parts of the kingdom of Bijapur and parts of the Deccan region also. So we have tried to have an understanding of the Maratha administration today. We will continue with the Marathas in our next class. Thank you.